Hey everybody, Jim Kerr here. I am so excited to do this episode of the Indispensable Conversation. I've got none other than Marshall Goldsmith as my guest today. If you don't know Marshall is an elite executive coach. He's a New York Times #1 best-selling author. His body of work has earned him all kinds of highly acclaimed distinctions, including world's #1 leadership thinker in Harvard Business Review. American Management Association called him 50 great thinkers who've influenced the field of management. And Bloomberg Businessweek has said he's listed as 50 great leaders in America. All this makes him the perfect guest to tackle this question with me, and it's, what is an earned life? Welcome, Marshall.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, I'm going to make sure I don't get this wrong, so I'm going to read it. We are living an earned life when the choices, risks, and effort we make in each moment align with an overarching purpose in our lives, regardless of the eventual outcome. And the interesting phrase there is regardless of the eventual outcome.
Yeah. You know, your latest book, The Earned Life, I've totally consumed it. I'm already starting to read it for a second time. Absolutely love the book. My biggest takeaway from it was you're basically suggesting to the reader, do the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
Yep.
Don't make the call based on some kind of expected personal gain. Just do what's right because that's what we should do. And if you live that way, you will have earned the life you have, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And the book is very not Western because, the whole Western ethos is everything's going to be okay when I do this, when I make the money, the status, the achievement. Life is going to be great when.
Yes.
And the whole ethic of the book is, no, not really. There's one type of book that has the same ending, and they lived happily ever after. That is unfortunately called a fairy tale.
Yes.
That's not the real world. In the real world, and I talk about this, we have to constantly re-earn our lives, and there is no when we get to, and everything's going to be great when. And the other thing about the achievement is our over-focused on results is a complete fool's game for a few reasons. One is you don't have total control over the results. Jim, the last time I checked, neither you nor I caused COVID. So we don't really have total control over the results. But number two, let's say you achieve the results. That's nice. How much peace does that give you and happiness? A week? A day? What happens next?
So true.
More.
I wanted to get at some of the other things in the book, and I think you handle all this stuff so eloquently. But I wanted to talk about what's your take on the source of today's existential crisis?
Well, a lot of today's existential crisis is, I think, loneliness. Let me talk about what happened. The book was really inspired because Mark Thompson, my friend, and I, we spent, 2 years, almost every weekend, 6 hours every weekend, where people talked about their lives. And these were amazing people. Their names are in the book. There's Curtis Martin, the National Football League Hall of Fame, and Pau Gasol, the basketball star and Broadway star and head of the Olympic Committee, president of the World Bank, on and on and on. Incredibly distinguished people. Every week talked about life. And they kept coming. And they showed up, which was pretty amazing, given how busy they are.
Sure.
And, Mark and I talked about it and why. One of the reasons is it's lonely out there. There's an old saying, it's lonely at the top. It used to be lonely at the top. It is lonelier at the top today. People are afraid to say anything to anybody. They're afraid to say anything to anybody. And to be in a group of people where you can act. One guy said, I love this group. For 1 hour a week, I get to act like a human being.
Yeah.
For 1 hour a week, I get to be a human being. I don't have to put on a show. I don't have to pretend I'm something I'm not. And, although these people are phenomenally successful, they get the same percentage of kids with drug problems. Parents have Alzheimer's. People die. You don't stop being a human.
Right. Yeah, and the other thing that I've noticed with all of the above is it just seems that there's just a lot of apathy out there, right?
Yeah,
There's that sort of lack of purposefulness, a lack of motivation, it seems, and I know COVID certainly contributed to that, but
right.
my hunch is it was already started, and it might have been, I don't know, the geopolitical realities that we were living with, prior, and continue to live with today. I'm not sure, but boy, as a coach and as a consultant, I just see it every day of the week.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think also part of it is, the idea of that something out there is going to save us.
Yeah,
The Great Western Art Form sounds like this. Just something you may have seen a few times. That there's always the same drama. There is a person. Oh, person is sad. Oh, they spend money. Whoo, they buy a product and they become happy. This is called a commercial. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen any of those before, but we have been bombarded with this message millions of times.
yeah,
And the message is happiness is out there, not in
mm,
here. And the other thing is social media makes it worse.
yes,
Oh, social media is a disaster.
yes,
The average kid that's flunking out of school in the United States spends 55 hours a week on non-academic media. That's an addiction.
yeah,
Yeah, it's just, and what happens is you're comparing your life with these other fake lives.
yes. I
I
know.
mean, I got grandkids. Hell, they're not that cute. They're not that cute. They act up all the time. What is all these saintly kids who are all beautiful and every vacation is nice? No, they're not. People
Right.
arguing and bickering and kids act like monsters. I mean, it just is totally unreal manufactured life. And then you compare your life to it and say, well, my life's pretty bad.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah, because who can live inside that commercial, right? But it kind of brings up another topic I think you talk to marvelously, and maybe I feel this way because I happen to agree with you. I don't
Yeah.
know, but I want you to talk a little bit, if you would, about the notion of empathy. It seems like everyone's saying it's a necessary leadership trait, but do you
Right.
really think it can cause more harm than good?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was like everybody else up until about age 70, 71. And then I started studying empathy. And I'm going to quickly go over 4 types of empathy and talk about each one, good and bad. The first one is called the empathy of understanding. I understand where you're coming from. Now, as a coach, I'm actually good at that one. And that's useful as a coach. You help people, you understand where they're coming from, you're more productive. That's all good. On the other hand, advertisers are better at it than I am. I mean, look, Budweiser spent hundreds of millions of dollars on ads featuring a little dog and a horse because they know they're going to get more beer back than it costs. Now, how many men go into the store and I'm buying that beer because I love that little dog? Zero. But that is exactly why they're buying the beer.
Yeah.
Propaganda people understand this empathy of understanding.
Yes.
Advertisers, salespeople. So it could be good. It could be used to manipulate people.
Mm,
Number 2 is the empathy of feeling. I feel your pain, which just sounds kind of glorious. Well, one of my clients is Dr. Jim Downing. He was in the 50 people. He's head of St. Jude's Children's Hospital.
hmm
He's got to watch kids die every day.
Mm.
Well, he can't carry that stuff home.
Oh,
That's not good for him to carry it home. It doesn't help his wife, doesn't help his kids, it doesn't help him, doesn't help
right.
him be a more professional. So
Yeah.
I feel your pain could be useful. Dr. Patrick Frias is also in our group, and he's head of the Rady Children's Hospital. And, Dr. Patrick said the first 2 months he worked as a doctor, he went home and cried every night. And he finally had to realize, I can't do this. This is not healthy. It's not good for me, for these kids. It's not good for anybody. I don't know if you've ever been to St. Jude's, but first time I went there, my instinct was to start crying.
Yeah.
That is the worst thing I could have possibly done.
hmm
That little kid with cancer comes up and sees you start crying.
Yeah.
How does it make them feel?
Yeah.
You feel like they're terrible people. They make people cry.
Yeah.
Then the next type of empathy is the empathy of caring. I care about what you do. Now that sounds noble.
Yeah.
And it's okay. That can be good, obviously.
Sure.
On the other hand, I love the story in the book about the hedge fund manager.
Yes.
I love it. Okay. To talk about somebody in charge of a children's hospital is one thing. You kind of think they might have a problem with caring too much. How about a hedge fund manager? They don't care at all, right?
Right.
I'm watching this one hedge fund manager who this was years ago, was worth $1 billion, and his colleague is worth about $3 billion. So it's, the old guy's $3 billion, young guy's $1 billion. So a young guy interviews the old guy, says, why don't you have a fund anymore? You make a fortune. Everybody would invest. You know what he said? I'm not as good as I used to be. So the young guy said, well, why not? You got all this experience. Why aren't you as good? He said, I started caring.
Yeah.
He said, when I was young, I made, obviously, for people, hundreds of billions, and I lost hundreds of billions. I won 52. I lost 48. Hey, that's why I'm a hero. I didn't care.
Yes.
When I got older, I started thinking about their retirement and healthcare, and this is college. And I started caring. You know what he said? It became much less effective, much more conservative and much less effective. That's why I don't invest other people's money.
Yeah.
For me, he's worth $3 billion. He invests his own money. It's just a game. If he loses, let's say he loses $100 million, who cares? Now he's worth $2.9 billion. What difference does it make? But that's why you get burnout. Healthcare workers have this problem. They care too much. They carry it home with them.
Yes.
And they burn out. And the other kind of empathy is the empathy of doing or acting. I'm going to actually do things to help you. One of the women in our group is one of the nicest people I ever met, said her problem in life is she's a fixer.
Yeah.
She solves everybody's problems.
Yep.
Some entrepreneurs have this problem. They fix everything. Well, then people don't learn to fix things themselves. And so if you look at each type of empathy, it's good and bad. And then to me, a guy I love who's one of our group is Telly Leon. Telly played the role of Aladdin on Broadway literally 1,000 times.
Wow.
1,000 times he was Aladdin. Yeah. And so I said, well, Telly, what'd you learn about empathy as this actor? He said, number one, I fell in love with a princess every night. Now he said, I'm gay. I didn't, you know what? When I'm on that stage, I'm not gay. When I'm on that stage, I'm in love with her. And then I said, how do you motivate yourself? 1,000 times to do the same play. He said, I was a little boy, 8 years old. And, maybe everything wasn't so great. And he went to a Broadway play and had the singing and colors and lights and music. And he said, it made me so happy. He said, every night I go out there on stage and this is for that 8-year-old kid. And he said, if there's one kid in that audience that was like me, it's for you, kid. Yeah. It's very, very touching. And to me, empathy is, am I being who I need to be for the person that's in front of me right now? Not am I doing some virtue signaling about aren't I sensitive? And, and we think about empathy. We think about how do they make me feel? We don't often think about how do I make them feel?
Yeah.
And, entrepreneurs have this problem all the time. Family business. They come home, all they do in front of their kids is they talk about how tired they are, how they work too much, blah, blah, blah. Then they wonder why the kid doesn't want to take over the business.
I know. Yeah. The thing is that I like you, I've seen thought leaders sort of make a cottage industry around empathy to the point where I recognize their messaging, but then I watch how they behave. So, it's one thing to say something, it's another thing to watch their feet. And that's sort of one of the things I coach with my clients is it's not enough to say something. You've got to be something, you've got to embody it. And another sort of angle on this too, and it's more around like, oh, well, you should be empathetic because look at all these people that are counting on you and so on. And I kind of ask the question, well, where does personal responsibility come into play? Does that matter anymore? Well,
look, I went to a presentation at the National Academy of Human Resources several years ago, and they talked about employee engagement. This is not an exaggeration. 100% of the dialogue in employee engagement was it's the company's fault. If you're not engaged, it's the company's fault. And as you just said, 0% said it's your responsibility to be engaged. It's like people are like, excuse me. Now, on American Airlines, I have 11 million frequent flyer miles. One flight attendant is positive, motivated, upbeat, enthusiastic. One's negative, bitter, angry, and cynical. Everybody's been on the same flight. Yeah. Well, they have the same employee engagement program.
Yep.
They have the same pay, same uniform. What's the difference? It's on the inside. So I totally agree with you. All this business of everything is somebody else's fault is nonsense.
Yeah. It just promotes sort of a victim mentality. And if you really believe you're a victim, then where do you find the motivation to come out of that?
You don't. What you do is you wait for somebody else to, quote, give you the motivation, and they're not going to.
No. I feel like this is a really great place if you're willing to do it with me, Marshall. And you can say no if you don't want to do it. but I was watching your movie, and
Yeah.
I absolutely loved the chant that you did in the movie. So, would you mind
Happy to do it.
would you mind
Now,
I think it's a great way to sort of break up
now, are we
this.
ready? I'm going
I'm
to
ready.
teach everyone this chant. Breathe deeply. Put both feet on the floor. Imagine you have a cord going from your top of your head to your spine, straight. Center yourself. Now, I'm often asked this question: how do you get so much energy? And people don't say it. You're an old man. I do this chant every day to give me energy. So I hope it works for you. Breathing. It's a good Buddhist chant. It goes like this: there's no business like show business.
I, abs- I absolutely love it. And I loved it. What a great.
And I actually do this with my coaching clients because sometimes, although they're great people, sometimes they whine. Poor me, isn't life terrible? I only made $35 million last year. Wah, wah, wah. So I always say, basically, shut up. I said, and I give the example of a Broadway play. I said, did you ever see a kid get out there on stage and say, my foot hurts? Nope. My aunt died last week. Nope. I have a headache. No, it's showtime.
Yeah.
And I always tell them, you make about 1,000 times what that kid is making.
Yeah.
That kid can get out there night after night after night and do this stuff. So can you.
Yeah.
It's showtime.
Yeah. Yeah. And this kind of leads me to the next question that I want to explore with you. And it's one around, what do you see as sort of the common challenges for all these successful people that you've coached and continue to coach? What are they challenged by?
Well, of the people I coach, I was interviewed in Harvard Business Review and asked a question: what's the number one problem of all the successful people you've coached?
Yeah.
And my answer is pretty simple: winning too much.
Mhm.
What's that mean? If it's important, we want to win. If it's meaningful, we want to win. If it's critical, we want to win. If it's trivial, we want to win. And if it's not worth it, we want to win anyway. Why? Winners love winning.
Mhm.
It's incredibly difficult for winners not to constantly win. Now, a case study: you have a hard day at work, hard day. You come home, your husband, wife, or partner is there. The other person says, I had such a hard day today. And we reply, you had a hard day. You had a hard day. You have any idea what I had to put up with today? See, we're so competitive, we have to prove that we are more miserable than people we live with. I gave this example to my class at the Dartmouth Tech School. This guy raised his hand. He said, I did that last week. I asked him, what happened? He said, my wife looked at me. She said, honey, you just think you've had a hard day. It's not over.
Yeah.
It's not over.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I share a similar take on that. The needing to win has definitely been something that's been drilled into at least the American psyche.
Oh,
Messages about winning at any cost, et cetera, et cetera. But isn't business a team sport? And if
yeah.
a leader is all about winning and has to destroy anyone who has an opposing point of view or whatever, are they sending the right message to the folks they're leading? I mean, are they showing them what what good looks like?
No, not really. And what happens so is in my book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, any human or animal replicates behavior that's followed by positive reinforcement. Nobody gets more positive reinforcement than a CEO. I mean, everyone laughs at their jokes and what happens. So it's hard for them to stop doing stuff they used to do.
Yeah.
No matter how, and one of the guys in I do these retiring CEO classes, which is hilarious, right? They go from tragic to hilarious, right? One guy is Mike Duke. Mike was the CEO of Walmart. So Mike said, I had this joke I told, and I loved the joke. It was a clean joke. It didn't offend anyone. I tell my little joke, everybody laugh. And then he said, I retired as CEO of Walmart, and I'm in this group. And I tell this joke. You know what he said? No one laughed. He thought, well, they must be grumpy. Another group. No one laughed. He said, finally, my wife goes, Mike, you idiot. Did you actually believe that stupid joke was funny? When he was CEO of Walmart,
Yeah, sure.
I've been to dinner with him, and I watched him tell the same stupid joke. One of the guys at dinner was the CEO of General Mills. Walmart's 30% of his profit. Mike tells a joke. Do you think this guy laughs?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Funniest joke in the world.
Right. Yeah. No, it's so true. When you're constantly surrounded by people that are saying yes, 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 and telling you how great you are and all that, you really develop these blind spots, and and it's folks that are coaches that really are needed then, right, to
Yeah.
help people recognize, expose those blind spots, realize that every joke they tell isn't the funniest thing on the planet, you know. Um, I wanted to ask you this question, and I thought you, again, just really well done in the book, but can you talk to us a little bit about credibility has to be earned twice?
This chapter's had a big impact on people in a way I didn't think about before I wrote it. Um, Credibility is, you're trusted, people believe in you, you're credible, which is obviously a good thing. And part of credibility is I am competent. I am a competent person. So I've earned this credibility. The other part, those people have to see you as being competent. And if you don't get their approval, your competence can be completely irrelevant. I mean, you mentioned books. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I've sold, 2.5, 3 million books. There, to be in the top half of all books sold on Amazon in a year, you have to sell 2 books. Half of them sell 0 to 1. I mean, it doesn't mean they aren't good books.
Right.
I'm not arrogant enough to believe that my books are better than 16 million other books. I'm sure many of those are better than anything I ever wrote. Nobody ever read them. See, they earned credibility once, but not twice. Well, I talk about this, and part of it is our need to prove ourselves and gain approval. And if you do need for approval as a little Google search in quotes, 80% of the hits indicate it's a psychological disorder, which is ridiculous. We all need approval. Who are we kidding here?
Yeah.
I need approval. You need approval. And our ancestors in caves, they didn't get approval. They died. Yeah, approval has always been important. Babies learn need for approval before they learn to talk. I mean, this is very deep. And, it's just part of life. The question is not that we should strive for approval. That can be very functional. The question is when and how. So Peter Drucker taught me this. He said, our mission in life is to make a positive difference, not to prove we're smart or right. Well, if I'm trying to sell myself or gain approval, because if I do that, it's going to help me make a positive difference in the world, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
On the other hand, my book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, is mostly about what I call overselling. It's about people who already won. They don't have to prove themselves, but they're still proving how smart they are and special they are and wonderful they are, which is completely adding too much value, completely useless. It does more harm than good. My book I did with Sally Helgeson, though, which is called How Women Rise, focuses more on underselling. These are people that don't seek approval enough.
Yeah.
Now, I've had a chance now to deal. My coaching career is mostly with oversellers. I mean, these people don't need to go to some assertive training program. They're very comfortable in taking care of themselves. On the other hand, in my podcasts I've done, a lot of people who call in messages are undersellers. They're people who under promote themselves. And with these people, I've got 3 questions. And this is, as a coach, I'm going to teach you these 3 questions. These are killer questions. If you're coaching someone who is an underseller, who says they don't promote themselves enough, these 3 questions are killer. Question number 1 is, would the world be worse off or better off if you became more powerful and influential? Well, usually they mumble around and then they find, better off. Oh, yeah, better off. As Peter Drucker said, we're here to make the world better. Question 2, does trying to become more powerful and influential make you uncomfortable? Well, yes, very uncomfortable. Then I ask killer question 3, what's more important to you? Making the world a better place or being comfortable? Well, if you're predominantly focused on being comfortable, then don't worry about it. If you want to make the world better, get over yourself.
Right.
And, and I'll give a case study I'm proud of is my friend Hubert Joly. You should have him on your show if you ever get a chance. Hubert Joly was CEO of Best Buy. I love Hubert. And Hubert became the CEO of Best Buy. The stock, they're going bankrupt. He turns the company around. Huge successful leader, right? Fantastic guy. He wrote a book called The Heart of Business about this, and I'm in his book. Hubert is a great guy. But I told Hubert, look, Hubert, I've worked with a lot of CEOs that leave and write books and give talks and stuff. And typically, they don't try to promote the book at all. They think they're too good for that. Now, I said, if you're going to write the book, you go out there and bust your butt and sell the book and realize you're a book salesman. And you don't want to be a book salesman. Why are you writing a book in the first place? And I'm so proud of him. He worked hard. He worked really hard to promote that book. It's been phenomenally successful. But he got over his ego.
Mm.
He got over that. And then there's this one final stupid phrase. I don't know if you ever heard this. My good work should speak for itself.
Uh,
That is such a ridiculous phrase.
yeah.
What if God is supposed to fly out of the sky and recognize you for your good work? My good work. That is a problem of either, number one, too little ego. You're too shy or hesitant to promote, or too much ego.
Yeah.
You think you're too good. You don't
Right.
need to dirty your hands by selling and doing
Right.
promotion. You know,
Right.
I am so good. My good work should speak for itself. Maybe not.
Right. Well, when I was preparing for our conversation today, and I thought about the credibility question that I just asked you, I started to think about the answer myself. I always
Yeah,
do that with guests. I don't want to catch anybody by surprise, so I'm not going to ask you something that I don't have a
yeah,
thought on. And I kind of thought about it a bit, and I realized, I grew up in a mill town. I'm going to share a little life story. I grew up in a mill
yeah,
town, very tough kind of upbringing.
sure.
My father was really a tough guy, um,
Yeah,
totally fearless type of person. Worked in a mill his whole life, uh, but he taught me this thing, and I carry it with me, and I use it in my consulting and my coaching all the time. And it's that don't feel like you need to try to prove yourself, right? Unless there's a reason to prove yourself. So that
right.
was kind of the thing.
Yeah,
And in other words, be tough, but don't act tough,
right.
you know? And I don't know. I think it's somehow got lost lately. The
Yeah,
people that I've been working with kind of feel like they have to be selling who they are all the time, all the time. And there's I feel a lot to be said for being yourself, being authentic. And yeah, you can have great ideas and all that and bring them up when they're appropriate.
right.
Don't you don't have to be delivering all the time, and it's probably why that group you talk about is so happy to be part of a circle of people where they can be themselves.
Oh,
you
and
know
they didn't have to pretend to be somebody they weren't.
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So look, I want to ask you this last question, and it's sort of around, what's the last bit of advice that you'd want to give to a leader? If you were coaching them here today, what would be something for us to think about as we wrap up our conversation today?
I'd like to give my last bit of advice just for a human, which could be a leader or not a leader, anybody.
Okay.
And it's pretty simple. Take a deep breath. Imagine you're 95 years old and you're just getting ready to die. Here comes that last breath. But right before you take the last breath, you're given a beautiful gift, the ability to go back in time and talk to the person who's listening to me right now. The ability to help this person be a better leader, have a happier life, a better life. What advice would that wise old person facing death, who knows what mattered and what didn't, and what was important and what wasn't, have for the you that's listening to me right now? Well, whatever you're thinking now, do that. In terms of performance appraisal, that's the only one that matters. The old person says you did the right thing, you did the right thing. The old person says you made a mistake, you made a mistake. You don't have to impress anyone else. Some friends of mine interviewed old folks who were dying and got to ask this question: what advice would you have? On the personal side, 3 themes. Theme number 1, 3 words: be happy now. Not next week, not next month, not next year. Time passes fast. Be happy now. Don't get so busy chasing what you don't have. You can never see what you do have. And, Jim, most of the people listening to this call, they have pretty much everything. Many people on this call, they have friends, family, health. Compared to me, they've got youth, right? Don't get so busy looking at what you don't have. You can't see what you do have. Number 2 on the personal side is friends and family. Never get so busy climbing that career ladder that you forget the people you love.
Yeah.
That's a big mistake. And when you're 95, they're the only ones that care.
Yeah.
And then number 3, if you have a dream, go for it. Because you don't go for it when you're 35. You may not when you're 85. It doesn't have to be a big one. It could be a small one.
Yeah.
Go to New Zealand, speak Spanish, play a guitar. Other people think your dream is goofy. Who cares? It's not their dream.
Right.
Business advice isn't much different. Number 1, life is short. Have fun.
Yeah.
Have fun.
All right.
Enjoy it. Number 2, do whatever you can do to help people. And then number 3, go for it. Go for it. And
No, I
finally,
love it.
what's my mission in life? My mission in life is very simple. As I've grown older, it's gotten simpler and simpler and simpler. What is it? Anyone listening, help you have just a little better life. If anything in this conversation help you have just a little better life, or maybe the people around you have just a little better life, this is a very good use of both of our time.
Yeah. Right on, my friend. I love all that, and it's actually, it kind of choked me up a bit. So thanks for sending us off with that, Marshall. I appreciate you so much. Keep up the great work. So inspirational, and I can't wait to talk to you again.
Thank you so much.